Which is the greatest quality of knighthood?
Truth. That's it. It must be truth. Above all, when a man lies, he murders some part of the world.
All right, I'm supposed to be on vacation, and I had said, unless Tua somehow gets cut or Dan Marino unretires and starts as the Dolphins quarterback, I ain't covering anything. But a close second was the revelation of Bullygate. And I don't want to, there's so many podcasts going are out there talking about Martin and Incognito going over the story. I really like Dudley Durong's take on it. I thought it was step by step of the article from ESPN. And so if you want to go over the details of that, although I'll say I kind of disagree a little bit with Dudley in some regard, he kind of shifted it like Martin to his mother, who was a corporate lawyer, for the responsibility. But he went to his mom and father before he went to the coaching staff with the recording of Incognito and the story. And he had a plan. He's a lot of things, but he's a very smart guy. And all this revolved around him not losing his signing bonus. And that signing bonus played a huge part, if you read the rest of the story, his investments in Bitcoin. That signing bonus helped him make, from what he's talking about being a 1% of Bitcoin, to be a multi-millionaire of maybe even close to a billionaire if he's reaching that 1%. So he came out and told the truth. He never gave his bonus money back. Very smart kid, went to school for business. He had a lot of mental issues, but I just can't put it all on his mother. It clearly, he could have talked to the staff. He could have talked to brass. He could have talked to the NFL to clear things up. And he was very happy for this to go the way it went, and the results that played out worked out to his benefit. But that's not the main point, although from a Dolphins perspective, we all know there's some bad stuff that happened to us. And so that's really a clear part. But the most important part, the part that got me having to come back and do this podcast, because I understand journalism. I was going to be a journalist, a former Times reporter. I was training under him. And he said, don't go into journalism. It's dead. And I kind of didn't understand what he meant, but I sort of learned later on. And this is the key element. This is why, because I understand cycles, news cycles. And if I wait, till after my vacation, it's not going to be really as hot. People might not pay attention and get to this point. So I had to do it because it's central to the platform, the modus operandi that I set forward when I wanted to do this thing. And I'm going to read Omar Kelly's little tweet, and it created a little bit of a firestorm, more so from what I'm seeing. I'm not saying it's so, because I've been dipping my toe in Dolphin stuff, more so on Twitter than in the podcasts. And that's another reason why I had to come out. So Omar Kelly, Bullygate was the most painful period of my journalistic life. It was never-ending onslaught of PR stunts from one team meant to fit an agenda, which was Richie Incognito was a bad man, and the Dolphins put Jonathan Martin in a horrible environment and made him want to quit football. Truth is, his heart was into it. He didn't like being criticized. He wanted to go home. As a media member, you had to report things you knew were lies. So if you know anything about me, I've been talking about suit hustle. And I've been talking about it since 21. And I saw a clear hustle from the Dolphins on Flores with Greer and Ross. I've talked about it many, many times. It's not to say Flores was a good guy, but you could tell if you're savvy enough that this was a media push. It was meant to obfuscate, it was meant to propagandize, and it was meant to deflect from the reality of what was going down. And I've seen this thing play out over and over again. I think a lot of people now kind of understand But this right here is the suit hustle origins. You have Omar Kelly saying, as a media member, so I've heard for a while, you're a YouTuber, you're not in the building, you don't know jack from some people. Well, it's true, there's inner understandings, but there's also a price. And this is not to say Omar Kelly's a bad guy or any of these media guys that have media connections are bad guys, but you have to understand your information, the good and the bad. Like people like me, we're YouTubers, but we don't have to pay homage to the Dolphins organization, and they control narratives. And I want to know is, you had to report things you knew were lies. Who told him to report this? Is it his editor? Was it the organization that he worked for? Was it the Dolphins directly or indirectly talking to his newspaper, talking to his editor? That would be a really huge point. But clearly, as he says earlier, it was never-ending onslaught of PR stunts from one team, the Dolphins, meant to fit an agenda. And if you understand that this was done then you should understand that it has been done and gained velocity from that point because it worked up until now. So when you're told that Chris Greer is a nice guy and all he does is want to serve everybody, and then you wonder why he's never fired, and Flores has dead bodies in the basement, and Fangio, he was a bad guy and he didn't want to be here. Maybe this stuff is true, but can you truly believe it? This is why I believe that you must use critical thinking, use your own brain to parse through information. Every source of information has a strength and a weakness, or a strength and limitation. In this case, a weakness, because they could be manipulated. If they were manipulated then, how can you trust them now? It's not to say don't pay attention to them. It's not to say they're bad guys. But if you look over here, this is I typed in, I know it, because I went to school for it. But I typed in, what's the number one rule for journalists? Commitment to truth. The first rule of journalism is to be committed to truth. Journalists should avoid distorting, lying, slanting, or hyping information. They must respect the right of the public to truth and defend freedom in collection and publication of news. Journalists should also avoid conflicts of interests and maintain professionalism. But this has been my credo. Anybody who's watched me understands I say this over and over again. I say, don't trust everything you see. I say, my goal is I might be a jerk. I might not be into hopium, but I want to be truthful because this adherence to a modus operandi, a series of rules in order to do what you're supposed to do is ingrained in me. Back from when I went to military school, and then I played football and martial arts, and then just living a life with liars when I was a kid, and then going to journalism school and seeing this. And it's why I wanted to be a journalist, to help bring the truth. I'm not saying I always have the truth, but my commitment to you is to be honest, even as if I'm telling you now, I don't have the subs that I need in order to keep my sponsors happy because they wanted me to cover all the teams. I said, I need to protect my Dolphin fans. I could have gone the I hate to or I love to around, got loads of subs. I didn't. I played the middle of the road. I didn't say Flores had dead bodies in the basements. I didn't say Fangio was an idiot and a bad guy. And those things don't get the clicks, but it's honesty. And so I want you to understand this. You've got to go back through the past and say, if they lied to me then, and they're the major voice to create narratives. They've got big Twitter followings. They got YouTube channels. They've got the papers. And then people just listen to them underneath them and they don't mean wrong, but they say, well, they're in the media and they got access, so they know what they're talking about. And then it continues, but they understand from the Dolphins front office, they're the number 2 most expensive media department in the NFL. They need it because they screw up all the time. They do deceitful things, deceptive things, and they need to cover their behind because that's how Ross does it. But understand the weight of what he said here. Again, I'm going to show you this little bigger image. Let it sink in. As a media member, you had to report things you knew were lies. Think about that. And think about how this is not a major story. And the person who made him, quote unquote, he had a choice. It's not easy when you lose your gig. I know, I'm in that process. But he was influenced by his higher-ups to lie. And you've got to be clear, it's happened again since then. And it's happening now. And it will happen in the future until you say, no mas. The Dolphins do not respect you. To do this means they don't respect you. You're just a dupe to give them your money. And that's sad. And it's sad that the journalists didn't stand up, but maybe they didn't think the fans would back them if they did. That's why this thing is so critical. Anyway, I'm going back to my vacation. I hope you see the value of this and the value of you being a smart consumer. If you're not a smart consumer, they're going to feed you poo-poo. That's what they're going to do. You got to be smart. Anyway, back to vacation, building more 40K models, diving off cliffs into the water with my kids and all kind of playing with dolls and everything else I got set up. I'm looking forward to it. Anyway, you guys are the best. Curtis saying, be well, go Fins. Curtis out. Start building your own online sportsbook today by getting signed up with aceperhead.com service that'll allow you to book action on sports from all around the world.